Good afternoon. My name is Lieutenant Colonel Heath Mullins, United States Army, and I am the course director for the Joint Logistics course here at Fort Lee, Virginia. My previous background pertaining to joint logistics is I served in the Defense Logistics Agency within the U.S. Indo-PACOM Area of Responsibility, or AOR, as a strategic plans and executive officer. Prior to that, my assignments, I served with the 82nd Airborne Division as part of their Global Response Force initiatives. And before that, I worked theater security cooperation events in the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, Kazakhstan, and United Emirates. Happy to be here and, appreciate you all letting us talk to you about joint logistics. I'll be followed by one of my facilitators, Major Sarah McGann.
Hello, Loa, my fellow logistics officers. So I am Air Force. I am the joint part of this course. Major Sarah McGann, logistics readiness officer in the Air Force. A lot of my previous experience has been at base level. So coming to the joint, logistics course was something new to me, but it's been really eye-opening, really enlightening, and really fascinating to work with the Army and also just to work with the other services, our students. And it's a dynamic course. It's a fun course. I hope you guys enjoy our presentation.
All right, thank you, Sarah. So today what we're going to do is we're going to look at our current and our future strategic environment. Sarah's going to talk to you about the joint logistics enterprise and the joint organization itself. I'll follow up with a brief discussion on joint logistics and focus on the future of logistics in a contested environment. And then at the end, we're going to give you a highlight of the joint logistics course itself here at Fort Lee, and, and hope to have some of you attend our course in the future. So the first slide we're going to talk about is the strategic environment. In our current environment, there's a great power competition between the United States and the People's Republic of China and Russia that negatively affect our national interests globally. The United States no longer enjoys the unopposed buildup of large iron forces or iron mountains of forces and supplies, and is really faced with anti-denial and anti-access from our ability to project force in the future due to these near-peer threats. When we look at cyber domain, cyber continues to impact our global partners and the homeland. Examples include the 2015-2016 cyber incident with Maersk, which shut down one of the world's leading transportation organizations and haunted world commerce. And then our partner with India has experienced cyber incidents against their national power grid recently, which exposed vulnerabilities to cyber attacks and things of that nature, and is becoming more and more mainstream. Within the DoD itself, the Department of Defense, we've had the ability in the past couple of decades to basically project our force on a global scale and a large scale. However, as we move into the future, we're really going to be focused on global integrated operations and how we will project future joint forces and, how they're being shaped to be agile, deployable, and tailorable to future threats. From a functional perspective, we are contested, either from, other organizations conducting intelligence gathering, impeding our ability to conduct intelligence gathering, as logisticians, our ability to support forward forces, and, ultimately, how do we conduct our power projection at a time and place of our choosing without being interdicted? Currently the DoD has been watched by its near-peer adversaries for the past couple of decades, and they've kind of picked apart some of our vulnerabilities and weaknesses. We no longer enjoy the time and unopposed access to air and sea ports in order to conduct large-scale combat operations against the near-peer threat. the People's Republic of China continues with their Belt and Road Initiative and have either built, updated, or operate many of the world's seaports and airports that our vessels rely upon. And I'll pause here for comments. Unheard. So what drives our national strategy? So with the national strategy at the top right here, the current strategy was developed under Secretary Mattis and General Dunford when he was the chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff. So when we look at the strategic context and direction, the three documents that you're seeing right now, the National Security Strategy, the National Defense Strategy, and the National Military Strategy are really the documents that drive in our playbook as how we counter these near-peer threats and we focus our nation. The National Security Strategy was last updated under President Trump. We can expect an update from the Biden administration in the near future. It also means the National Security Strategy is also a means for, our presidential administrations to highlight to our partners and allies overseas, our nation as a whole, and to Congress on what their priorities are and where they see the direction of the country. It's important to, bring Congress into the communication because they're the ones that will fund the future initiatives. And again, it highlights where we focus our efforts over the next 4 years. The central document right here is the National Defense Strategy. And what this does here is it highlights the shift to our near-peer threats from our previous strategy. It talks about, building and reaffirming our alliances with our global partners. And it also looks at the modernization of our forces for future operations. For the past decade and a half, our forces have really been focused on violent extremist organizations, and they've been focused on non-near-peer competitors. But in the future, we can expect or plan for near-peer competition, which could include large-scale combat operations. So as we move down here, what the what the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff does is he takes those two previous documents and he or she is responsible to prepare and submit a strategy to the nation on how we intend to meet the goals of our president and the National Defense Strategy. As you can see right here, the last one that was prepared in 2018 really focuses to a alignment to deter conventional attacks. And what I'd like to highlight here is when we look at the deterrence to conventional attacks, they're not necessarily physical violence, but they could include potential cyber attacks on the homeland itself. So in a nutshell, the National Military Strategy really gets after, how the Department of Defense is going to meet its nation's objectives. And I'll turn it over to Sarah to talk about the joint organization.
So thank you. So we're just going to briefly just talk about, who's got the authority for what and who's going to be funding what. And just kind of get an idea of where our military departments fall in. So you guys can see it's a very simple structure. You got the president and the SecDef, and then obviously they are advised by the National Security Council over there on the left-hand side. If you follow the lines straight down the middle, you've got the Unified Combatant Commands. So, and you can see the box underneath that says conduct operations. So they're the ones, they know their requirements, they know what they need. They are the ones putting the requirements out there, right? We have this mission, we have this operation, this is what we need. President, SecDef, everybody, this is what we need to conduct this mission / this operation, this process, whatever it is, right? The military departments, as you can see, it says train and equip forces. So they've got the people and the equipment to satisfy those requirements, right? Except that the military departments aren't going to decide, oh, Air Force is going to do this, Army is going to do this. Marine Corps, Navy, Coast Guard, whoever, you're going to do this. Over on the right-hand side, you got the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And if you look at the box underneath, it says integrate and best, military advice really. So they're actually gonna play that role of, all right, Air Force, you're gonna do this, Army, you're gonna do this, or you know what I mean. They know the unified combatant command requirements. They know the military departments and who has what capability and who can provide what. And so they're the ones that are gonna say, okay, here's who's gonna be in charge of this. Here's who's gonna provide this service or this capability. So it's really a team effort. The Joint Chiefs of Staff do not have any command authority. We like to put that out there because there's a misconception that the chairman is a commander and he or she is not. That position is not. It's more of an advisor role. So the military departments are not deciding the requirements. The unified combatant commands are, and the military departments, Air Force, Army, all of us, we are providing the resources to fulfill those requirements. Next slide.
So what we're going to look at here is the Joint Logistics Environment Operating Framework. And the purpose of this slide right here is to really show you that there are really 3 levels of effort when conducting operations. Our forward most boots on the ground, rubber meets the road organization within the joint operational area is determined to be called the tactical level. If you pull back a little bit to the Unified Geographic Combatant Commander, that's more of an operational level type infrastructure. And then back here in the homeland, we have the industrial base. So what's important to this? So bottom line, we define its success of any mission from the tactical outcomes of our forces forward. We can do the best thing about equipping and synchronizing between strategic and operational level activities, but when we get down to the tactical level, that's how we judge mission success, which moving into the future could be negatively impacted by near-peer competitors. When you look at the strategic level, this is how we have the industrial base and our end-to-end processes across the different service agencies and across the different, across the Defense Logistics Agency and the Joint Logistics Enterprise, and how they support the forward operator. And then their effectiveness is really determined on the processes, the timeliness of the processes, and how those optimized processes assisted with and impacted the tactical level. Now, what the operational level does is just what it says there. That is the coordination, integration, and synchronization of support coming from the homeland into a joint operational area. The responsibility there is to ensure that all forces allocated or assigned to the mission, that they're all synchronized so you don't have multiple competitions for resources forward, especially when conducting initial operations, and really optimizes against which service component or agency or partner nation capabilities really meets the requirements of the tactical force forward. Because we have to use an economy of force. We have to use the least amount of capabilities moving forward to affect a positive outcome at the tactical level, because our resources on a whole within the Department of Defense are not on the level that they were 20 years ago. And right here is where the real focus is on the impacts for joint logistics in the force. This is really where all the service components and things really come together at the operational level. And as stated earlier, our tactical level is really rubber meets the road. Did we cross the goal line? And was the operation forward have a measured positive outcome? And then our forces forward have the ability to impose their will or project force and have freedom of maneuver and action across the joint operational area, the JOA, And did those outcomes affect the national strategy or the national level efforts that put those tactical levels into execution?
All right, so how is all of this working together? When I first came on the JLC team, and I first found out that I was going to be, part of this joint logistics course, whenever I thought about joint logistics prior to coming to the course, in my brain, I only thought about the services. I only thought about, okay, joint logistics is us doing the logistics process with the Army and the Marine Corps and the Navy and the Coast Guard. Like that's what joint logistics is. And so when I came to the course and I learned about the joint logistics enterprise, like the JLEnt, and how huge it is. So look at that giant oval in the middle of the screen, and then look at the smaller oval that says Joint Force Commanders, right? And then you got all those millions of circles all around. At the top, you've got all the services and the defense agencies. You've got industry, the commercial companies. You've got our multinational partners, the interagency and the non-governmental organizations. Literally all of those entities and agencies and programs and organizations and services, they're all working together to make this happen. So it's huge. The enormity of what the JLEnt is really awesome, and it's something that we do go over in the course. And I just from personal experience coming into this course and thinking it was so much smaller, thinking it was just military services, and realizing that it's so huge, and how, if we're going to do an operation, the military portion is really small compared to how much we're going to rely on our commercial partners and industry, how much we're going to rely on maybe the State Department, how much we're going to rely on our multinational partners to help us, all these other entities that are going to make that mission happen. It's not just us in uniform. So that's what the JLEnt is, how all that's going to happen to support the Joint Force Commanders. And there at the bottom, you can see the insights, understanding the authorities and the goals and limitations of the other agencies, right? The authorities, the goals, and the limitations of the State Department, of our multinational partners, of everybody else in that big oval. How we're going to establish relationships and build trust so that when a crisis does occur, we can all work together, or even speak the same language, or even understand how these other agencies work so that we can, use them and work together efficiently. Capitalizing and leveraging our stakeholder capabilities, and then just being prepared to provide support to each other, again, so we can work effectively and efficiently. Next slide.
So when we look at joint logistics imperatives, we really focus in three areas: unity of effort, asset visibility, and rapid and precise response. What's meant by unity of effort is really who has the role and responsibility and the authority to direct activities to occur. Is there a common metric that's used to determine whether your efforts to support the warfighter or the mission forward, are they effective or are they not effective? And then the third bullet is really focused on the joint multinational processes. Are we all moving and turning and, like on a rowboat, are we rowing in the same direction? Are we going at the same tempo? And what that does is, when you have unity of effort, it cuts down on a lot of turbulence, a lot of wasted time, and a lot of wasted resources, whether those resources are money, time, or assets, and it focuses everyone to the mission. For visibility, how do we work with our partners on a commercial sector? As Sarah noted earlier, the joint logistics enterprise is huge. We within the Department of Defense are just one small portion of that JLEnt organization, or enterprise, I'm sorry. And, we operate within the DoD a lot on SIPR type systems. However, there has to be a transition point when we work with commercial vendors and carriers that our partners don't work in the commercial sector on SIPR systems. So how do we accurately, have a snapshot on the resourcing and our commodities that are moving forward to support the warfighter? What systems and processes do we have in place? And asset visibility, has to be down to the data and the accessibility of the data, the ability for the DoD and our commercial partners to be able to understand that data, and ultimately to secure it from, near peer competitors that are trying to determine what actions we're going to take place. Operational plans, contingency plans are great when they're done at echelon and secure systems. But at some point in time, the plans have to be put in an unclassified or controlled unclassified information environment, so our commercial partners, who are a major mechanism for our ability to project force, are allowed to be able to see what's going on. And really that ties directly into a rapid and precise response. We'll talk a little bit more about this in the future of logistics, but are we getting the right force to meet mission requirements that is there at the right time and has the ability to conduct operations? Is it measured again by its efficiency or its effectiveness? So those are the top three joint logistics imperatives. When we look at the focus areas, we look at the warfighting readiness, and that's really the joint logistics enterprise's ability to protect and sustain military power globally at a chosen time and place. This is what we have spoke about from the beginning of this presentation to now. How are we getting our forces forward? How are we sustaining military power forward? And how are we doing that on a global scale when there's activities occurring in different geographic combatant command areas? And then when we look at near peer competition, we're not in a direct kinetic fight with the People's Republic of China or Russia. We're not trading, munitions and rockets and, putting force on force. But, if we pull back and look at the cyber realm, there are some activities out there that impact not only our partners on a global scale, but also impact our commercial carriers and our commercial partners that we rely upon to get to a location unopposed, conduct our joint reception, onward staging, integration, build up our forces, and then conduct operations. So there's definitely that understanding of what we can do and what our competitors can do forward. When we look at global integration, we can no longer focus all of our efforts into one area of operations. For the past decade and a half, a lot of resources, manpower, money, and capability has been projected within the CENTCOM area of responsibility in response to activities in the Middle East. However, as we continue for the future, we don't have that luxury of being able to focus in one area. We have to look at a globe we have to look at the globe as a whole, because activities could be occurring within US Indo-PACOM, CENTCOM, and US EUCOM or AFRICOM simultaneously. And with our limited resources within the DoD, because of what our current capability is, it has to be a decision. Are we going to affect US Indo-PACOM, CENTCOM, EUCOM, or AFRICOM, or NORTHCOM, the homeland, because there could be the possibility of conflicts here within the home front. And, one of the means of, moving forward in the joint logistics area is, innovation. We talk a lot about 5G technology and leveraging technology advances to be able to get an advantage over our near peers. But we're challenged there because if you look at even in the home front within, General Motors Company or Chevrolet, they're stopping the production of some of their vehicles because they can't keep up with the chips that are needed to run the computers in vehicles moving forward. How do we within the continental United States leverage technology with what resources we have here and with our partners to not be negatively affected by a near peer that could impact our ability to leverage technology? And really that ties into the next focus area, and that is strengthening our alliance and our partner networks. The United States can't afford to stand on the world stage as a single actor. We must work with and strengthen our alliances and partner networks around the world. When you look at a commercial, the commercial negativity of the People's Republic of China and their Belt and Road Initiative, United States and some of our partners are really behind on, China's ability to utilize, economic influence within regions that disrupt our ability to, conduct operations. And our alliances and our partner networks is we have to be together. We have to be united in our ability to not only move about an area and project force, but we also have to be linked between our partner nations, our formal allies, and the industrial base on a global scale.
All right, so this slide might not look that interesting, but to me, it's very interesting. And hopefully it's interesting to you as well. So the majority of our audience is Air Force LROs, logistics readiness officers. So this is an important slide for us because as Air Force LROs, just hear me out. So most of us, when we think of logistics in the Air Force, we think of aircraft maintenance, supply, material management, POL, fuels management. We think of vehicle management and vehicle maintenance. We think of deployment and distribution. So JLEnt wise, right? JLEnt's all those entities. The word logistics is so much bigger than just those couple of areas that we as Air Force LROs think about. These core logistics functions, this is why I wanted to show this slide. So you can see there's 7 core logistics functions, JLEnt, like enterprise-wide, that fall under that logistics umbrella. There's there's health services, deployment, distribution, supply, maintenance, logistics services, operational contract support or OCS, and then engineering. So what I want to point out here is that think about us in the Air Force, right? The first one, joint health services, medical logistics. There's a whole separate AFSC or MOS for our non-Air Force friends. There's a whole separate AFSC that does that. We as 21Xs, you will, to include all of us, we don't really think about that. Maintenance. We have our maintenance officer friends that maintain the aircraft. We know about vehicle maintenance and vehicle management, but aircraft maintenance and aircraft management is a whole separate AFSC. Logistics services. So this slide, when you see logistics services, that's your food, that's your lodging, that's your mortuary affairs, that's hygiene services. Again, in the Air Force, we have a whole separate AFSC. Our services and personnel's friends do that. OCS, operational contract support. Again, a whole separate AFSC. We have contracting officers, our contracting officer friends that do that. And then engineering, we have our engineering friends that do that. So I say this to the crowd. In the Air Force, you have your role as a logistics officer, but you're not going to stay in it. You're not going to do this job only in the Air Force. You're going to go and you're going to be in joint environments, and you're a logistician. When you're in a joint environment, you're no longer an Air Force LRO. You're just a generic logistician, which means people are going to look at you and they're going to ask you engineering questions. They might ask you contracting questions. They might ask you services and medical logistics questions. And so really what I'm trying to convey with this slide is just understanding, like, look at those blue circles at the bottom. That's all logistics. air crew, civil engineering, airfield management, security forces. Again, in our brain, security forces is a whole separate AFSC. I can't, what? I can't go be a cop, but it's still logistics, right? Airfield ops. So just understand joint wise, if you are in a joint environment or deployed to a joint location or whatever, you're a generic logistician, and you might be asked to do a lot of things that you weren't expecting, and that maybe you're just not, maybe you're uncomfortable with, or maybe you might not be initially trained for. But it's we need to know it, we need to learn it, we need to be somewhat familiar with it, and yeah, just understand that our job is much bigger in a joint world. So, next slide.
So how do we do that in the future? As Sarah said earlier, you have 7 core logistics functions. And, as we bring all the service components together and try to focus efforts within the Department of Defense, how do we all get after things and focus on common goals? So out of the 2018 National Defense Strategy, this problem statement was created. And what highlighted here on the left was, a decades-long focus on, counterterrorism, counterinsurgency operations has basically eroded our capabilities to project power in an operational environment. Our current environment, we have dedicated, delineated combat zones broken down. We're really focused on conventional attacks, and then innovation when budget allows. It goes without saying within the Department of Defense that when it comes to how we get after doing what needs to be done to protect the nation, it does come into how much money and focus within the DoD we had to be able to get after everything. So as we move forward, we can see right now that we can no longer sit back and enjoy the homeland as a sanctuary. We are vulnerable in our nation, not only within our commercial sector, but within our infrastructure here, such as our power grids, our internet capabilities and things like that. So those could definitely be open us up to attacks in the future. I don't see, and I don't think people are really planning on, brigade size formations, landing ashore in the United States, but we could receive some of the same activities that's occurring in India now when their national power grid was shut down. Which affected hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people within their country, and shut down operations, and it took a while for them to get going. When we look at moving forward, as we stated before, some of our near peers, competitors, they've been using their economic power and their influence on a global stage to, buy up, reinforce, or take ownership major seaports and airports around the world. A lot of our ability to move forward is we're not going to be able to enjoy what we had in previous, decades, to be able to go anywhere we want to go within the DoD and be able to not have someone try to interdict us. And when you look at this as a whole, here's really a couple of different ways to resolve the problem. So one of those is when we look at, let me go back one right here. If there was an event that would occur, say, in CENTCOM AOR, say a negative event where we need a large force to move forward to be able to counter an action. So what used to be the CENTCOM commander would basically had forces apportioned to them for operations, and they had a lot of flexibility what they could respond with. and then everybody around the world would just focus in on providing and funneling and shuttling resources, whether, you know, maneuver forces, air wings, bombers, etc., all channeling from around the globe into CENTCOM AOR to, you know, action whatever event's going there now. But in the future, you really got to look at if an event occurs in CENTCOM, and again, this is a fictitious example. The first phone call that the SecDef and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff is going to be to is not the CENTCOM commander. It's going to be to the NORTHCOM commander. And the first question that's going to be asked is, are we secure on the home front? Is the homeland protected? Because again, we no longer enjoy the specific geographic areas of threat, you know, impacting our national structure. And one of the ways of getting after that is the Joint Staff J7 was tasked to write supporting concepts for the Joint Staff. And as we move into the next statement here is the Joint Staff J7 was tasked to provide a joint warfighter or joint operational warfighting concept to see how we within the DoD can, you know, fight future wars. It's very fluid. It's still in a draft form. There's nothing been finalized. But why do you care as a logistician about the J7 and the joint warfighting concept? Well, really, it's how the Joint Staff J4 and how the rest of the services are going to be focused on the concept of joint concept for contested logistics. And what that means is JCCL is really how are you as a logistician within the Air Force, how are you going to support operations in the future? You know, the goal is, again, to, you know, provide assured power projection, sustain logistical lines of communication with forward forces, you know, to gain a decisive advantage over an adversary, and use those finite resources that we currently have to meet operational requirements. So this is how it was broken down into this triad. If you look at the triad, you look at line of effort number 1, which is a resilient integrated logistics command and control. What that really boils down to is, how do I become more data driven and make decisions at the speed of relevance, and who is going to enjoy the authorities to synchronize and coordinate and execute on a global scale? We haven't done that before. So that's usually been pared down to the operational area, but now it's being pulled up into strategic realm. And at the strategic realm, is there anyone out there that currently retains the authorities to direct on a global scale in a command capacity? Not really. You got the President of the United States, but again, we have finite resources, and you have the Secretary of Defense. But again, we have finite resources to be able to do it. So when we look at line of effort number 2, which is assured joint power projection, how are we going to project power in the future? You know, what platforms are we going to use? You know, what are our processes going to be? And then how do we sustain it? And when our forces do go forward, our forces aren't going to be lumped into one area. An example is Kuwait. Everything is very compressed into the country of Kuwait from back in 2003, 2004 operations up into Iraq. And there was a large consolidation of forces, supplies, resources, and things within Kuwait. But in future operations, when we look at line effort number 3, is our forces have to be distributed. They have to be spread out over a large geographic area. They can't all be lumped together because they're at threat towards direct fire weapon systems, indirect fire weapon systems, communication systems, and cyber attacks and things of that nature. So we don't want to put all of our future forces into a small operating environment. We want to disperse them because that gives them the ability to survive. And then those forces that are going to be forward, they're going to be a lot leaner than they are now. They're going to be they're going to be very agile. They're going to be able to get to places quick, fast, in a hurry. They're going to be able to self-sustain for a limited period of time, and then be able to maneuver and have that freedom of action as we spoke about before. So the JCCL is really the future of logistics, and you as Air Force officers really play an integral part of that. So with that being said, we've talked a little bit about a lot of different variations and topics of joint logistics. But what we're going to do now, and I'm going to turn it over to Major McGann, is we're going to talk specifically from this point forward on the joint logistics course at Fort Lee, Virginia itself. Sarah, over to you.
Thank you. Okay, so let's talk about our course. This course is, like I said before, it's very dynamic, it's very exciting, it's very eye-opening and enlightening. So as you can read there, so our ideal target audience is your 04, 05, some 06s, some E8s, E9s, and then DoD civilian logisticians, kind of either already in a joint position or getting ready to go to a joint position. We do have waivers for, maybe an E6 or some captains or some CGOs or whatever, that might be sitting in a joint position or getting ready to go to a joint position. But really our target audience, as you can see there, is intermediate, level officers, senior NCOs, and DoD civilian logisticians. And then we go over processes associated with the JLEnt and the ability and how to apply the joint logistics doctrine to everything. I'm not going to read it to you because you guys are all literate. So another cool thing is that officers do get 1.5 points of joint credit out of JLC, and sometimes we are able to line up a JHOP class, which is Colonel Mullins, help me, Joint Humanitarian
Operations course.
Yes, thank you, sir. So we sometimes can line that up so that students can also take, it's a couple of days after the JLC is over, and you do get 0.5 point joint credit from that. So next slide, please. Okay, so learning objectives. The two things we like to really focus on here is that third purple bullet. Again, explaining the JLEnt's operational framework associated with the command relationships and responsibilities. And then another thing that is kind of a big deal in our course is that last bullet. We do analyze logistics capabilities and gaps, and the students develop this theater logistics overview. It's a 3-page paper, and it's summarized into a large capstone event at the very end. It's pretty awesome. Well, we're going to talk about it on a later slide, so I won't get ahead of myself. Next slide, sir. Awesome.
So right here is where our kind of key points, and I'll touch on the transition that we're currently in. This was a 10-day resident course at Fort Lee, Virginia. We transitioned this last summer, September, and to a virtual learning course. And what this course is our delivery mechanism is via the Microsoft Teams format, aligned with the course classes, and tests are done on the Joint Knowledge Online. And then we retain historic briefs and guest speakers within the Mill Suite. The major event that we do with the class as we build up from weeks 1 to week 4 is we have a capstone training event, and the students will be given a scenario within a geographic combatant command or a global integrated exercise. And what they'll do is they'll be given a problem set, and then they'll take that problem set and provide their recommendations or analysis of the problem of how to, conduct the theater logistics overview update, and they'll present their findings to a Unified Combat Command J4. In the past, we've had the Major General Drushel from CENTCOM. We've had Rear Admiral Hines from US UCOM. We're getting ready to conduct a brief to US Indo-PACOM J4 Brigadier General Helwig, and Joint Staff Principal Deputy Director Miss O'Brien has also received an outbrief. So the students will have that direct engagement with a senior leader, and gain some mentorship and some key points. If you're interested in our course, you'll see right here fiscal year 21. That's our current schedule of what classes we'll have, executing moving forward. And I'll turn it over to Sarah to talk about the students.
So this course we have there that it replicates an online master's program. Now, obviously it's not as long, it's only 5 weeks, but we put that in there because oftentimes we'll get students that will come in and they'll have this assumption that it's just a really super easy course. You just click through some slides and get a certificate where you can type your own name in. And that's not what this is. We use an adult learning model, and there is reading, there is research. You have to write a paper, you've got to work in small groups, you've got to do a couple of group briefings. And then just like Colonel Mullins mentioned, we do have a large capstone event at the very end that the entire class participates in. So it's a class that requires some time management skills. So second bullet there, the students do attend class on an average of 2 times per week. Because we're virtual and our students are all over the globe, literally all over the globe, and in every single time zone, we only come together on MS Teams twice a week. Maybe it's for instructor briefings, maybe it's for guest speakers. We only do it twice a week, and we record everything because we understand that students are not, it might not be conducive to their schedule. Maybe, we're on the East Coast, maybe they're in Japan and it's the middle of the night there, so they can watch the recording later. So we do limit the amount of times that we're asking students to come online because we realize everybody's all over the world. Just that's the third bullet right there says exactly what I just said, that they're everywhere. Now, the next bullet talks about some of our guest speakers. We have some amazing guest speakers that come in from the Joint Staff J4. That's actually our course sponsor. So we get a lot of love from them. DLA will come in, Transcom, each of the service components, SOCOM, FEMA, USAID. I was trying to think of some other ones, but we have a plethora of guest speakers that come in and talk about their services and just talk about how they work with the JLEnt again. And then we do go over the joint command relationships, and we do go over the other items that are listed there in the last bullet. Okay, so go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, Sarah, go ahead.
The last bullet talks about the seat allocations. Like Colonel Mullins mentioned, we used to be 10 days or 2 weeks in residence. So we had like seats where humans would actually sit. And so we had to, the services only had so many allocations. Because we're virtual now, I'm not going to say those allocations don't matter, but we have a lot more flexibility with them. And we were able to bring in more students from each of the services than we could when it was in residence, and we only had so much room. So, sorry, what were you going to say?
No, that was exactly it. So an example of that is traditionally in a fiscal year, the Air Force has roughly 20 seats that they can utilize through the entire fiscal year for the course. If we're within our 42 student cap is where we try to keep it with our instructors. We do have at our discretion to allow more personnel in from a different service component. The two biggest agencies that have really been taking advantage of that have been the Department of Navy and then subsequently the Marine Corps. So they've really been getting after and are already over their traditional fiscal year allocations for the course. And then the Air Force is kind of, trailing behind. But we hope after this meeting with your organization, we can get some more air power injected into the course. So with that being said, who are we? This is your primary points of contact within the Joint Logistics course team. To make things simple, you'll see down here the Joint Logistics Instructors group email box. If you have a question about the course, you want to try to attend the course, or you want us to come and do guest speaking presentations for your functional area, we do that. We go into good detail, and I know this previous 53 minutes has been a really, what we used to say, big hand, little map overview of joint logistics, and it really just barely skims the top of it. But with the Navy Supply Corps, we have done presentations to them on joint command relationships. We've talked in detail about the JCCL with other organizations. We're scheduled to meet with the Coast Guard next week and present to their Rear Admiral upper half on the Joint Logistics Enterprise and bringing more Coast Guard students into the course. So there's a lot of opportunity out there, even if you can't attend the Joint Logistics course in a virtual capacity. For the senior leaders that are listening to this, we are available to come down in a virtual capacity and deliver leadership professional development classes to your people. And with that being said, I'll turn it over to Sarah, and then I'll do the final closing comments. Sarah, over to you.
So if you've made it this far, I appreciate you listening for the last almost hour. And I'll just second what Colonel Mullen said. Is we are always open to talking about the course. We love the course. We can go on and on about it. If you want more details, please reach out to us from that work box. And yeah, we definitely hope to see more Air Force. The LROs, the Air Force LROs, we bring a lot to this course. Just if you can get in, message us and we'll try to get you in, because there's not enough of us and we need more Air Force LROs in here.
Air Force is behind the curve just a little bit. With that being said, again, I really appreciate the opportunity to come and speak to your organization. We did touch on a very high wave top on a bunch of different topics in joint logistics. We look forward to, maybe doing a question and answer or a in-person. These types of briefs go a lot better in person when you get the stimulation back from the students. But again, appreciate your time and look forward to working with you all in the future. Take care. Airborne.